It is my great pleasure to introduce Audrey Lorberfeld and Samdisha Kapoor. Women of Search, we've developed a long-standing relationship as an ally to Women of Search at Open Source Connections, and we'd like to count all the rest of you as allies as well.
Hello. Okay. Thank you for having us. I'm going to pass it to Samdisha to introduce herself, and then we will get started.
Yeah. Should we wait? Oh, it's up on the screen. Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, everyone.
Oh,
This is not on.
can we also have the sticky one?
We can just go, yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Samdisha. I am the co-presenter today with Audrey, presenting on this topic of how great search PMs build for impact. Yeah, you heard my name. I'm a senior product manager for search relevance at Wayfair, and that's my contact detail up there.
We also had another author who could not make it here today, Olena. She's over in the UK. She is a senior product manager at a company called Reed. And I'm Audrey, if you guys don't know me. I'm the founder of Women of Search, and I'm also a software engineer at SourceGraph. We also wanted to give a big shout out to two people specifically, one of whom is in the audience now, Tito and Natalie. Tito and Natalie helped us tremendously. They gave us a ton of their time in informational interviews and notes and slides and all the things. So huge shout out to them, and I highly recommend making connections with them if you ever have the chance. All right, so our agenda, we're going to start a little bit with me talking about Women of Search. Then I'll pass it to Samdisha to talk about why search is such a unique field and deserves a brand new playbook. And then how great search PMs can be the most impactful. And then I'll go back to everything and talk about learnings, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. All right, so Women of Search. I founded Women of Search in 2021. Its point is to just be a community of women and allies dedicated to the empowerment and celebration of women in the search field. Our mission is to provide a network and platform for technical growth, mentorship, and knowledge sharing. And I did a little statistics diving a couple weeks ago, and I'm really excited to say that we are over 285 members across 10 countries, and we have people employed at companies of all sizes, from big tech, Fortune 100, Fortune 500, to very, very small startups. So I encourage everyone to join us, women and allies alike, and make connections with us all. You can catch us at recurring slots at Haystack US and Haystack EU. We also have monthly meetups that happen over Zoom. We have study groups. We network with each other, recommend each other to jobs. It's a great little network we have built. And one more exciting note is that Olena, one of the co-authors of this presentation, actually made a website for us. So we have a website. It's womenofsearch.org. So go there, find out more about us. And then we do most of our communication talking on the relevant Slack workspace, which I think you all are a part of, in the Women of Search channel. I also wanted to quickly note the new mentorship program. This is a collaborative program between Women of Search and Open Source Connections. David mentioned it yesterday. We are still open for submissions. Everyone who wants to be involved is involved. You're not taking anyone's spot or anything like that, so we encourage everyone to apply. And we're always in need of more mentors. So if you ever wanted to get mentorship experience, please come join us. It would be very beneficial to everyone in our community. You can find the form to submit your information for the program at womenofsearch.org/mentorship. And back to Samdisha.
Thanks, Audrey. So when we were starting to think about the structure of this presentation, one thing that stood out to us was that why even do a talk on search product management? Should it not be like product management, which has been, happening for a while in the industry? What really makes search so different that it requires its own playbook? So it made sense to talk about how search is different, why search is different, and what makes it so difficult from a product management perspective. Because in order to create impact, you need to understand what you're trying to create impact on. Before we start, let's do a quick activity to get everyone involved. And this example hopefully will give you a good idea into what makes search so complicated, so complex, so nuanced, and so dependent on the user intention and perception. So I have 2 screenshots from Pinterest, and I have 2 keywords for all of you. I just want you all to shout, what do you think when you search for chicken on Pinterest, you would see at search results? Yeah, recipes. Right. You see a bunch of chicken recipes. You see some query expansion, pills about recipes, pasta recipes, breast recipes, etc. The other term I want you all to tell me what you think is chickens. Not very different word from the first one. Sorry, what's the word? Birds, yes. What did you say, Tito? Chicken coops, yes. The difference that one single letter can make. And, this is what makes search so different and hard. A small change in phrasing can completely change the meaning. And yet users don't explicitly explain their intent. They just expect the search engine to interpret it. Just goes to show the nuances in language and how, intent matters in showing search results. So yeah, that brings us to, the second point, or actually the first point about how and why search is different and hard is that it begins with a clue, but gives us the full clarity. So unlike other platforms such as Instagram and TikTok, where the product shows users the content and users will choose to engage with it or skip it, search actually starts with the user. But the tricky part is that users really tell us exactly what they want. I work for Wayfair, so a query that might come in is like a blue modern couch, where the customer thinks that they're giving us a lot of information to work with, but they're not telling us what their budget is, their material preferences are, what the dimension of the sofa that they're looking for are, but yet they want the system to somehow understand that context and give them precise results without fully expressing it. So a great search experience doesn't just match the text, it also is supposed to understand the context. And as product managers, and actually all of us working in search, it's our role to connect the ambiguous signals and deliver a clear and a satisfactory user experience. So working with that ambiguity and translating it into something the user wants is one of the key things that makes search so tricky. The other thing that, in the Search PM meetup that I attended on Tuesday, I think was one of the biggest takeaway for all of us was that search is not a vertical slice of the thing that, we have to focus on. It works as a whole, not in different parts. So, many of us would be working on search front-end teams or the back-end team or performance. But something to keep in mind is that it's not just about tweaking the algorithms and making them better or refining the UX standalone. It is about the whole system. From ranking to UX to infrastructure to filters, everything needs to come together seamlessly. And misalignment in any part of the system can make the best of the best results seem off if we're not showing them to the customers in the right way. In one of the examples from the PMs that we received, they mentioned that how their B2B platform team once found that their roadmap was too focused on just making model improvements. And they totally ignored the user pain points around discoverability and poor result presentation. It took them a couple of tries to zoom out and think about the whole experience from UI to backend, and that is what helped them create impact. So, and something that, when I talk to a bunch of search PMs, what comes up is that, oh, but I don't own this piece of the vertical, my ownership is only backend, but that doesn't mean that our thinking needs to limit there. When you're dealing with a problem, think beyond whatever area you own and work with your counterparts or stakeholders to help create the impact in those areas as well. Something else that one of my mentors, who used to be a search leader for a while, said, which is so true, is search success is very probabilistic and often invisible to the eye. 10 years ago, if you asked someone about how Google search results are, what would you hear? It's pretty good. If you ask them today how Google search results are, it's pretty good. But in the back end, there's so much has advanced, so much has improved. But to the customers or users, search success will always be invisible. Rather, that is what we're trying to do. As search, we are just a medium for customers to get to the point or the product or the document or whatever they're trying to get to. So we should try to remove as much friction from their way as possible. So what stands out to them is an irrelevant result, but something when it's working fine, success is often invisible. Another example from one of the PMs that we gathered is that, and it's a pretty funny one about how search impact can oftentimes be invisible, is that in LinkedIn, the user research team once shipped a feature, and they did some user interviews to see how users were responding to that improvement. They didn't really specify what improvements they made. They just did an A/B live interviews with them where they showed them 2 versions. And to everyone's surprise, customers were pointing at some things that they hadn't even touched in so long. And they totally missed the actual improvement that they were trying to seek feedback on. So that just goes to show that any improvement you make is invisible, and our job and defining success should be to remove friction from their journey as much as possible. Something that makes it a bit more tricky for product managers in this context is communication. Something's going to work or not, when success is 100% guaranteed or not. Our attempt should be to get as close to the result, as close to 100% as possible, knowing very well that we may never get there. And how do you communicate that upwards and horizontally is like a challenge that PMs have to work with, and what also makes search so complicated. Search also has different forms, and what role it plays in the overall business. Knowing that context is really, really important. For ChatGPT or Google, search is the product. So as a product manager focused on search, you'll be thinking about different things as opposed to TikTok, where the algorithm and the recommendations feed is the product and search is a fallback. So what role search plays in your organization also differs. I've worked as a pricing and promotions PM in the past, and no matter what company I moved to, the job of the pricing engine was always to do the same thing. But search and the context of search depends and varies from team to team, company to company. So yeah, those were some points on just trying to ground us all on the complexities behind the search world, what makes it challenging and fun and tricky. And I hope none of this was a surprise, because I'm sure all of us face this in our day-to-day, but it felt that important to talk about that and address why search deserves its own playbook. So with this context, let's move on to the next section, which is about how do great PMs, work with this uncertainty in this complicated domain and yet build for impact. And again, I'd like to shout out to all the PMs that we talked to. It's a collective learnings and lessons that we have, accumulated along the way. And yeah, let's do that. So, starting the first and the most fundamental thing that as product managers, in order to build impact is to understand where that impact should happen. In the first section, we saw that search is unique because it's subjective and probabilistic, and success is not always clear. Success rather is a feeling, but how do you translate that, convert that into metrics? One way to go about that is to start from the top, to really understand what your business is doing, to, if it's Wayfair that I work for, what is it that they're trying to do? Are they trying to, at this point, grow into a different market? Is their goal or outcome to increase revenue, to increase a market share, to expand into newer markets? Really starting from the top and understanding what the business is doing. And then the second step to end the business alignment is to understand how can search contribute to that overall vision. If Wayfair is trying to expand into a new market where the language is different, then the search's role in that outcome would be to make sure that the new languages are supported by that market. So starting from the top, getting that business alignment, and really understanding how your product, your piece of the product, can contribute to that overall goals of the business is one way to start to define success and create an impact. The next step is to understand behavioral changes, that what are the specific actions that will demonstrate that improvement, and what is it that we're trying to shift. Again, the example of or another example could be growth. If Wayfair is trying to grow into a newer market, then do we expect a lot of new customers to come onto the website? And if so, are they going to search a lot with newer terms? So the focus maybe in that quarter or that cycle shifts to making sure that the search experience for new customers is optimal, and we're improving that. So starting from the top and then trying to understand what behavioral changes we want to support is the second step in how we try to define success. And then signal validity is something that is not a one-time process, but we should constantly do that, where the chosen metrics that we have, whether they are reflecting the user satisfaction or whatever the goal that we're chasing is or not, is something that we should always strive to do. I mostly have worked in e-commerce, and a trap that I found myself falling into is the trap of chasing after clicks. And e-commerce is such a domain that people will click on multiple options before selecting one. So to try and optimize clicks was maybe not the best measure to go after, because I myself as a shopper like to browse through 10 different dresses before I select one and maybe add that to cart or save a link or whatever. So I found myself chasing the wrong metric that wasn't really reflecting the user satisfaction. Those metrics in product terms are called vanity metrics, which look good on the outside, page loads and page views and searches, but truly whether that is contributing to your overall goal is something that PMs should try to get clarity on, build clarity on, and then work towards moving that goal. One framework that I have found myself using is, you must have heard of Amplitude. So they have a North Star workshop where there's a lot more to that workshop than what you see on the screen, but this is sort of like the outcome of that workshop that they do. So again, it starts from the top. If it's Google, their goal is to increase revenue. So that's where they start. And then they really try to come up to a single metric that is tied to the product's success that can directly move the revenue. So for Google, if people are searching on and engaging with search results on a weekly basis more, that means they're seeing more ads. That means Google's revenue is going up. So it's a whole exercise, but this is one of the examples that we could, of frameworks that I have used to get to that clarity of defining the success. And North Star, even though it's a single metric, there's multiple drivers to that single metric that product managers should also try to define and have clarity on. There's breadth metrics, such as how many active users are you getting on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, is key. If you see that number go up or down, then that is a reflection of how well your search is doing or how much are your customers trusting the search. If their queries per session are going up, then that could be a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe they're not finding the right results and they're having to search a lot more. Or maybe they're so engaged that they're searching a lot more. So having the depth of how well the customers are searching or what their journey looks like is also another way that we should try to measure and define success. And there's frequency metrics as well, that how many sessions per week are we getting, and if that is going up or down. And all of these metrics and whether them going up or down is good or not depends on the goal that you're trying to chase. But yeah, just one framework. Highly recommend you check out. Amplitude has a full PDF and a workshop playbook of how to run this if you're interested in doing that for your company. The second thing that product managers do a lot is to constantly learn from customer behavior, whether it is through experiments, whether it's through analytics, through looking at data, or doing discovery on competitive research on how other companies are trying to improve the experience. I sat down with a ex-search product manager from Pinterest who gave me a lot of great insights on how they used to learn from the small like behavioral nuances and try to make improvements there. So one key insight that they found is that customers, like I said earlier, will not just engage with one click or one product, they will click multiple times. So landing on the ideal number of clicks for a search results page was really helpful for them to understand whether this search session was good or healthier for a customer or not. You know, if customers on average click on 10 items before saving something to their, you know, pins or like boards, whatever, then that customers will click on 10 different products. That shouldn't mean that it was a bad session or like a reflection of a poor relevance. The other valuable learning from Pinterest that I got was the relationship between the query length and search performance. Pinterest actually found that when users increased the average query length from 1.7 to 2.9 words, their accuracy and filtering dramatically improved. So again, they try to really learn like from how many words are customers actually using to search, and they learned that the fewer words they use, the more vague the query is and less precise the results are. So literally the KR for 1 quarter was to increase the amount of words that customers search with. They also used some metrics of passed over results. So if you as a customer clicked on the 5th product tile on the search results page, then the 5th tile became the most relevant product for that given query, and the first 4 results were partially relevant or less relevant. So they also learned from user clicks, not just how much they're clicking, but what position they're clicking on, and use that to determine the relevance of those products as well. And they also used like query length as a proxy, where if customers were searching with short queries or head queries, then they assumed that these queries were exploratory in nature and they prioritized diversity, whereas long and focused and tail-end queries were prioritized for precision. So again, these are just some examples that I collected, but all to say that it shouldn't just stop at measuring clicks or conversions, but try to go as deep as possible and truly understand how your customers are behaving, how many words are they using, what position are they clicking in, and see if we can make improvements there. So going into the deep ends, to the nuances, is what product managers try to chase. The other thing that we do in the similar notion of learning from your user data is to do a constant log analysis. Logs are basically your customers, users' search queries and some metrics that you are interested in measuring. But they basically give you a real-time insight into how well is your search doing as a whole, what queries are failing, what kind of queries are being reformulated, and maybe where customers are dropping off. And doing this, you don't just learn a lot of context about your own search system and your customers, but you also unlock a lot of insights onto what needs improvement or attention. If you see a specific kind of query getting abandoned a lot, maybe that is an area that you need to focus on and try to improve in the next cycle. Or if the customers are using a lot of filters or less filters. So you'll only be able to know these nuances once you're really deep into the logs and constantly reviewing it day after day, week after week with yourself and your team. And this is actually a really good tool. When a stakeholder or hippo comes knocking at your door, fix this today, you'll have data at your to your leverage to show them that, sure, you want me to add more filters, but 6% of our customers abandon searches after applying a second filter. So maybe filters is not what they want. Or if they say that, search bar is not visible to me when I land on the page, make it bigger. You can say that 9 out of the 10 customers who search in a given session do click on it in a given time. So basically use your logs as a leverage, as a data point, to not just find opportunities for where to create impact next, but also for communication purposes. The other thing that search PMs do advocate for a lot is to ship with purpose, not pressure. Every time the planning cycle comes, how many items are you delivering? What's on your roadmap? Just 4 launches? That's not enough. Add more to your stack is what we hear often, which is great. We should optimize for speed, and we should try to run as fast as possible. But running without a direction will just like lead us to nowhere. So through these insights of looking into your logs, talking to your customers, like tracking your customer's journey on the website, will help you form some hypotheses and, take those hypotheses and experiment as fast as possible, as lean as possible, learn and validate those assumptions, and then do an analysis of whether it makes sense for us to launch this as a full experience or not. Just taking something and spending months on creating a new model or redoing the whole search results page may not be the best and optimal way to create impact. But where impact or how truly impact can be happened faster is by doing a lot of experiments quickly. And the last slide for me is that, just to my initial point about search is not a part or a slice of the journey, it's a whole sum. So as search PMs, we should really be thinking about building systems, not single features. Even if you're tasked to improve like a small part of the experience, try to expand that into how does this particular ask or feature contribute to the overall goal, and what else, like, is a model change or algorithmic tuning the only way to fix this, or can this be improved by a front-end change that we can make? So really like expanding the horizon and looking at the problem from different lenses is how you can truly create an impact. And always remembering that you're not optimizing for one piece, you're designing for the harmony of the whole experience. Yep. I'm going to pass it on to Audrey for some learnings.
Thank you. I'm going to go off script for 1 second. Can we just have a round of applause for Samdisha? She put so much work into this deck. I'm a software engineer. I'm brand new to product management. I learned so much through talking and working with her. And Elena, if you're watching online, thank you too. Just wanted to make that very clear that I am just along for the ride. And this was all women of search who are product managers and our allies in the field stepping up and helping put this incredible presentation together. So thank you. All right, I'm just going to do some TLDRs about what Samdisha very elegantly said in the previous sections. Some learnings that I and we took away from all the interviewing and content we read while putting this slide deck together is that prioritization is one of the hardest things any product manager has to deal with, and it's even harder when you're in the search field. These are some frameworks that we came across often. This is not to say these are the only frameworks. We have RICE. RICE stands for Reach, Impact, Confidence, and Effort. We have the classic Impact by Effort matrix, which I personally have used, and I like that one. We also have a cost of delay framework. So this is basically figuring out if it's like how much will be lost if you delay a feature. And the main takeaway that I learned from this process was that while prioritization is key, prioritization without purpose is nothing. So basically, frameworks are customizable and adaptable. And if you view a framework as a prescriptive set of guidelines to tell you what you can and cannot do as a search product manager, you are not going to do the best work you can. In order to do the best work, product managers, especially in the search field, adapt these frameworks to fit their specific business and their specific team. So something like your team size, your team's average execution speed, your team structure, your business org structure, all of these things will define how you fit these frameworks into your actual IRL workflows. Opportunity sizing is another thing search PMs do a bunch. This is basically figuring out the impact and size of the opportunity given to you, and then figuring out whether or not it's worth it to pursue. Search PMs specifically usually are more technical than traditional PMs. A lot of search PMs come to the field after previously working as software engineers or data scientists or applied statisticians, ML engineers, etc. And something that stands out about search product managers is that they size opportunities in accordance with real query data. So nothing a search PM, at least a good search PM does, is not backed by data. And that just goes to show what Samdisha was talking about, how search PMs really live in the logs, and they're more fluent in data and analysis than other traditional product managers need to be. They're also great at finding patterns. This is also where LLMs can come in and help people. They're great at extrapolating patterns. A lot of times as product managers, I think people hear from particularly loud and aggressive customers that want your product to solve their very specific need. And it's really easy to get pulled into the trap of just delivering for this loud customer. But great search product managers are able to take a step back and really dig into the data and find common patterns that allow them to build for the most impact felt by the most users. And it's really hard to do, to say no and to just, build for the many and not the few. Documentation is another thing that we saw throughout our interviewing process helps a lot, especially when you're looking back and gauging your success or failure back on your Q1, 2, 3, 4 roadmaps. Documenting your decision process behind which items you prioritized implementing and which you didn't, especially when you basically cite, SQL queries or dashboards or something that led you to that decision, is a really powerful thing that helps people prioritize and also approach upper management with the confidence that says, no, I do want to prioritize this. This is why I am fully confident that the numbers align with what I'm saying. And the last thing is basically just that there's a mental mindset shift that a lot of search product managers seem to inhabit, which I haven't seen with other product managers, but basically it's orienting your value and your success as a product manager and as a larger team around how what you implement changes real user behavior, rather than gauging your success by the number of features you ship. So you don't want to get into the vicious circle of just saying, wow, we shipped 30 features. Aren't we great? Or as an engineer, like, wow, I made 6 PRs a week that were all merged to main. And I'm like, so great. Look at my momentum. It's not about that. It's about impact. And the more you can keep your eye on the impact prize, the more successful you will be in life, but also as a search product manager. And that brings us into goals. So great search product managers are able to define not just goals that are actionable and doable within a certain time frame, but also goals that have real impact. And the way that a lot of this manifests is through crafting well-written OKRs. In general, a good OKR needs to be anchored to a business goal, like Samdisha was saying, linked to real user actions and data, and measurable. We all like measuring. You also want to, in the process of crafting the OKRs, align with as many stakeholders and other teams as possible. I think it's really easy for us as search people to only talk to other search people, but doing this will really just only do a disservice to you and your team. You want to step out of your bubble, and that will allow you to build for as many edge cases as possible, which is always good. And just like frameworks, OKRs should be adjustable. So it's really your job as a search product manager to communicate upwards to the C-suite, to your manager, whomever, that your OKRs, even though they're actionable right now, given the current data you have access to, should be flexible and adjustable as data comes in from A/B testing, from offline analysis, etc. And it's your job to kind of create this space for experimentation and flexibility, not only to allow real world impactful analyses to take place, but also to protect your engineering team's time, to protect your time, and basically just make sure you actually can over deliver and make people happy. So I just wanted to give a few examples. Some of these are repetitive from what Samdisha said, but I think it bears repeating. These are examples of how you can craft a good OKR based on some vague goal that upper management might give you. So if upper management is like, hey, we need more money, we need more revenue, Something you can say as an OKR is to increase your purchase rate from search on high intent queries from some percentage to some percentage. And obviously those percentages will be statistically significant and you'll do analyses, etc. If instead upper management says, hey, we're interested in growing new users, you might turn that into an OKR that says, we aim to raise first-time search engagement from new users by X percentage in Q1 or Q2, whatever. If instead the business says, hey, we want to actually retain users and get users deeper into the product, you might translate that into, we want to grow repeat weekly searches per returning user from 1.3 to 1.6%. And all of these is just really being able to quantify a vague goal and really like being comfortable in ambiguity. That's a big skill for search product managers. And we also wanted to leave everyone with some community best practices because we know a lot of people, especially if you're at a small stage startup or early stage startup, you might not have a search product manager. I think search product managers as a discipline are usually for more mature businesses. So these are things you can implement as an engineer, as an analyst, etc., even if you don't have a dedicated search product manager. So review logs quarterly, weekly, biannually, whatever cadence works for you with your team. So again, just like uncover those patterns. The more patterns you can uncover, the easier your job will be. Set recurring check-ins with cross-functional partners. This one I think we've said often, but it's that important. Bring engineers into your user calls. I actually had my first user call at SourceGraph the other day, and it was incredibly helpful because now I can build with like an actual human face in mind, and it just makes my work more pleasurable, more tangible, and I think it just betters everything. And then again, don't listen to the one loud customer. Don't fix one specific use case, one specific query. Root cause analyze some pattern that you uncover and build for the many, not the few. And lastly, or not lastly, second to lastly, communicate with intention. Again, Samdisha said this very well earlier, but we wanted to convey that saying no early and with data-backed rationale is completely okay and something that a search product manager who is good at their job will do semi-often in the goal of like protecting their team's time, mental space, and ability to actually build things and ship features. Managing horizontally and upwards, again, managing those expectations, carving out time for your team to experiment and change course based on data you receive from your experiments is key. And just anticipating team needs before they turn into big problems. This is just like a product sense that search product managers told us that they grow over the course of their career. It's not something you might be able to target explicitly as a growth area, but it comes with experience and is very important in exceeding in the job. So, TLDR of the TLDRs. Define success before you begin. We hit that one earlier. It's very, very important. I think something that great search product managers bring to the field, especially because we're slightly interdisciplinary, is critical thinking. So we don't just follow what everybody else is doing. We really look at the data, we talk to users, and we approach things with a critical lens that other product managers might not necessarily think is a tool in their toolbox that they should use. Great search product managers obsess over the data. I think we all love to obsess over data, and that can only make you better at your job as a search product manager, so keep doing that. Shipping with purpose, we've gone over this one. Document your goals, clarify user problems, give your engineers like actionable, doable, known problems that they can work on, and everybody will be very happy. And then work beyond your search team. Get out of your bubble, talk to as many stakeholders as possible, and that is the path to succeeding. All right, that's all we have for you. We'll open it up for Q&A, and these are the contacts.
Are there questions? You walk faster than I do.
It's a lot of wires. Careful.
He's trying to kill me.
Hi, thanks. This question is about fighting for resources between other different kinds of product managers. So if you have to fight for analysis or the developer resources for getting what you need done, if you find yourself starved for the resources that you need in order to accomplish the OKRs that you've agreed to. But I guess that wasn't a clear question. How often does that happen for you?
I think it happens all the time. One common thing that not just PMs but everyone will agree to is that they just don't have enough resources in the team, enough time. And I think in my experience, what has really helped get that resources is how well do what the needs that you have tie to the overall business goal. And if possible, if there's a revenue number or whatever, like what matters to the business, if you can attach to it that doing this or not doing this will result in a loss of like X amount of revenue has honestly worked for me a lot in getting the attention at least. So that's one way to do it. I've also seen teams be creative that if we are not officially getting any resources, can we get like a short-term contractor that can help us? So not just like stopping at that first no, but trying to expand. Can we, in this world of AI tools, is there a tool that we can like purchase and get funding for if we're not able to get someone to help us in this quarter? Might help with data analysis and other things. So that helps. But honestly, what has gotten me the most attention is when I bring a revenue number next to it and flag that. At least it gets me a conversation. Yeah.
And Kauzik says, I don't have a question, but I really loved the talk, especially all the learnings from the earlier segment. So thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I was going to ask the same question, but not a question. Love the talk. Thank you. I'm at Amazon. One of our vice presidents likes to say that you have to fail to succeed. Unfortunately, when you see this in writing, it looks like you have to fail to succeed. It isn't quite the same thing. Now, I'm older than you, so I've probably failed more times than you, and therefore learned more. One of the things I've learned is that the success of search depends on some of your partner teams, especially where your data is coming from. It also depends, in my case, one of my positions was in a company where I was doing internal search, so that all of my users were accessible to me. I could send out an email to all of them or schedule training sessions or whatever. So how do you deal with these other teams? I mean, you've sort of concentrated on what the search person can do. How do you address the problems with data quality? So the first time I complained about data quality, they said, you're the search guy, do search. Go away, don't bother us.
Okay. Not as a search product manager, which I know is not the point of your question, but as an engineer, I have found that every time I've reached out to the data team and asked like, hey, can I implement some telemetry for this thing? Or what is the context behind why we don't measure XYZ? They literally every time are like, oh my God, you noticed? Like, thank you so much. Like, let's work together and make the data better. And they're just so happy that someone outside of their bubble is actually interested in their interest. And I've never had a negative experience bringing gaps in telemetry or data quality to the attention of data people. I think as long as you do it correctly, people will get super excited about it and fix things. Oh, what kind of data?
Let's say you have new e-commerce,
Okay.
and your descriptions are all very vague, like
Oh.
this fashionable, wonderful item will make you stand out. You say, what the hell can I search for in that description?
Stavros said, no, the other thing.
No, the other thing. Okay, maybe I'll turn it over to the ecom actual search product manager for that one then.
Just to be clear, is it the product metadata or description that is noisy, and has a lot of text that you don't want to use?
It has text that you can't really search on intelligently. I mean, I'm transposing from it's a different domain, but in the e-commerce area, I've noticed that especially in fashion, let's say, you say the user may want a dress for prom. Well, how do you find that? Very few dresses are going to be advertised as this is the perfect dress for prom. But there are characteristics of a prom dress that you might be able to find, but even better if you could get better data from the seller that says, tell us please in your description what kinds of events this item of clothing is good for.
I see. Yeah, I think that's a continuous effort to improve if the data especially is not controlled by someone internally, it's very hard to get that moved. I used to work in a marketplace kind of a product prior to this, where we used to sell a lot of grocery items, and yeah, Pepsi in their description one time had something that was not even remotely associated to the drink that they were selling. They were selling an experience and a feeling and this and that, and we were like, this we can't use. So knowing what kind of data to use or not is one of the first ways that we started off. And I know my machine learning lead is here. We've talked about adding product descriptions into the models, and whether that is actually impactful or creates noise is something that we are always making a decision on. So knowing what product metadata from the list of the available data inputs is key, and you should always experiment, but also know that some kind of data will harm you more than help you. Some creative ways that my teams in the past and even now have seen is that using LLMs come up with your own product descriptions that should not be user-facing, but by looking at the visuals of the product or whatever that is selling, can you come up with some product tags that can be fed to the models that might be more appropriate. I've also used a third-party website in the past, which would do that kind of product taggings and inputs for my catalogs. So that company was Site. It's a Canadian company. I'm from Canada, so SYTE. But we would send them a daily file of all the catalog products we have for the apparel section, and they would generate tags and give it back. And that actually saw a lot of improvement versus what our internal merchandisers were using. And we were actually also sharing that data with them, that this is the kind of descriptions and tagging that is working for us. But also parallelly, as PMs, you just have to make noise as much as possible. I try to collect, or used to collect, a log of all these funny, fuzzy descriptions, and in whatever forum possible, share it back and show them best practices. It's hard when the data is not in our control, but it's somewhat manageable, or able to, if you shout loud enough, then someone will prioritize it somewhere, or you go with these other routes. I don't know if that helped or answered the question.
All right, we've run over. Let's thank our
no.
speakers. Thank you so very much.